Okay, so I'll give you a little update. It's very late February, last week of February 2025, and this is the project we're doing now, running conduit from the cellar of the new house and conduit all the way down there to the solar panel rack. And let me show you what we did. So coming down here in the hole, first we've got this piece of 2.5-inch conduit that's coming up from underneath the basement, in the basement, coming up into a wall here, and into the well, first it'll come up, and on the outside wall of the house here there'll be a disconnect box, and then the wires will go back into this solar room area where there will be batteries and an inverter to power the house. So here comes the conduit out. You'll notice as I bent it, you can do this with heat. I have a heat gun. Takes a little bit of patience and a lot of heat, but I did get it bent enough to go around this curve here. I bent it again right here slightly, and the rest of it's straight. We get to an elbow. Big sweep elbow comes up right here alongside the footing for this solar panel piling, whatever you call it. Right here will be a gigantic disconnect box that this will go straight up into. I've got all this in. It was glued last night, just letting it sit. You'll notice when I glued it down, I made sure that all the lettering on the conduit's facing upward. Code people like to see that kind of stuff. I did bed it in certain areas because the trench isn't perfectly level. Having said that, I don't think you have to bed it because it's conduit. It's not like drain line or anything that has to be perfectly straight. Where there's another elbow here that goes into the basement, and where it went in, obviously I had to cut a hole in the permanent wood foundation basement. So whenever you do that, you've got to treat the cut with some of this copper coat stuff for treated lumber. You know, you can't have any exposed areas that aren't treated when it's underground. And then I took a piece of treated wood, laid it over it, made a cutout for where the elbow comes out, covered it with plastic and some really tough builder's tape. Then another thing I did is, just to be safe, since there is a penetration here through the basement, I took another piece of plastic. I laid some dirt here. I took another piece of plastic and I laid it over top. That way, when you do get moisture, particularly in the winter, snows and stuff like that, when it soaks into the ground, the plastic will shed it away from the house, and you know, give some further protection for this. So, and it is below the frost line, but just in case, you know, we have a particularly cold winter or something, and this is the north side of the house, which would be shaded, and snow might pile up here, just to be safe. I want to make sure that this area doesn't heave and cause damage to that elbow and that, you know, that area going into the basement. Anyway, now we can get Dinah and start filling in this trench. So here I am at the end of the conduit line, and that box, it's gonna be a big box, make room for a lot of switches. Gonna come up here and mount right about there. But this rack is a Sinclair Sky Rack. Perhaps you solar people who are watching this know about this. You can see I got the one that's adjustable with these handles. This one is designed to hold 30 large panels. When I say large, 470 watt, they're about 7 feet tall by 3.5 feet, over 3.5 feet wide each, and this will fit 30 of them. So but it was, you know, these things go together pretty easily, but these pieces are heavy. And I was out here doing this. I mean, I had some help from Robert, but I did a lot of this myself, and it was difficult. Thankfully I had Dinah's help So I was able to, you know, use Dyna to tilt this thing and stuff like before I could get the adjustment screws in. But one thing I did do wrong is that, and I only found out after I put it together, where these purlins come together. You can see that there's 4 bolts holding it, and I'm only supposed to have 2. So just these 2, and I need to unbolt this, move it over, you know, to where these line up with these, and only put in 2 bolts, because what that does is, if you do it like this, shortens the space between the panels, and you won't be able to fit all your panels on. So anyway, I gotta go back and fix that. Elwood's coming out in April, and so I can get him to help me on this, because boy, this thing is heavy. Like I said, we can get this done quickly, and then we can probably get the panels on too. Yeah, so I've got to get this before I can cover this section here. I got to make sure this is lined up properly and all. Okay, so there's the hole I cut to fit that elbow in. So now I just got to fill it in. You'll notice I treated everything with that copper coat stuff to protect the wood. This mess filled in. Got some big gap filling stuff here. Whoop. Yeah, I think that'll do it. All right. Okay, so we're about ready to put this junction box up. Notice we got a couple of sections of strut, and we've arranging this so the conduit elbow, when it comes up, right into the bottom of the box over there. Also, because this is a really big box, and if we went over this way, it would interfere with the purlins and stuff on the rack adjustment. We also made sure this adjustment handle would clear the box and the super strut. So we made sure that this is on here tight, the bolts torqued. That's important, because when you're looking at grounding this, you want to make sure everything's torqued nice and tight so that you get a proper transfer of ground. And but we'll add some ground to this too. And we've got our DC disconnect switches on top of it, a couple of Myers hubs, watertight extensions, so we can stick some 1-inch EMT conduit on that, and then a weather head up top. Okay, well, there we go. Got the box installed. We've got 1/4 20 nuts with a rubber washer behind it to keep the weather out, and those screw into a little it's called a spring nut. It goes with this strut, pulls it in nice and tight to the box. As you can see, our handle still clears. That's nice. So we got the box up. Yay! One of the next things to do is verify where the rest of our pipe comes through, get that hole drilled, and get that set up. I think rather than trying to reach up there and do that, before I go any further, I'm going to put the lid on this, and I'm going to backfill this in, because the ground level is going to be higher here. That'll allow me to stand up there normally and get it done. This is how far we've gotten, about where we left off, but it looks a little different. Got an extra piece of strut up here because I'm going to run 2 pieces of EMT conduit up here and put some weather heads on it. And I just want to stabilize those, you know, make this nice and strong. These are the, I don't know if you can see that, that's a spring nut. And this is called super strut or unistrut. It goes by different names. So we just, you know, you screw them into those. And that keeps these pretty stable. You know, they don't move around as much, because like I said, these enclosures are kind of flimsy. Also installed a single gang box for a 20 amp outlet AC down here, in case, you know, you never know. You're working down here, you got to do some stuff in the future. Who knows, you're doing stuff out here, and you may need some electricity, and you don't want to string you know, several hundred feet of extension cord like I've done. So it'd be nice to have some AC here. You say, well, where's the AC coming from? This is all DC. I know. I'm going to string AC wires through alongside the DC conduit that's going back to the house, and then AC will be supplied out here. I literally could, there's enough room in this box if I wanted to, I could install an inverter in this box, an AC inverter, run it right off the DC here, and you know, run AC straight to that box using the solar energy from the solar panels. But at this point, I don't want to do that. I would only be able to use the electricity when the sun is shining, unless I had some batteries in here to back up, and I could probably fit one or two of those in here too. But I just don't want to do it right now. I'll just run the AC. That works. Then I don't have to have a separate disconnect and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, and there we go. We've got two lengths of EMT conduit, two weather heads. I've got these pipe clamps here to hold these in place, and some weather tight you know, fittings down here to bring wires down into the box. That 1-inch pipe should hold 5 10 gauge PVC wires, you know, from the panels when they come down. So 5 in this one, 5 in the other one, and I can turn these weather heads any direction I want. I was careful to make sure that the top of the weather head would not impede the underside of the, underside. I was careful to make sure that the tops of these weather heads would not impede or interfere with the bottom, the undersides of the solar panels when they're put up. But I wanted them as high as I could get. There's a reason for that. When you string wire here, you gotta put a little bit of sag in it for drip. You know, so water can drip off. If you have it too tight though, and the wire runs into it this way, you could take water in there. So what you want is for them to sort of come down, loop around, then go back up in there. I wanted to be able to give them as much sag as I can, because remember, this solar rack is adjustable, right? You got to make sure there's enough play in the wiring, you know, enough sag, enough extra in the wiring so that nothing, you know, goes tight or gets pulled when you articulate the rack. Okay, so let's talk about grounding for a second. Each one of these green wires coming off these surge protectors, and there will be another green wire coming in through here, through the conduit from the house, is for ground. Even this panel comes with a little kit that you can ground stuff to, but it's in a bad spot for me. So I got this little ground bus. I screwed it in with a self-tapping metal, you know, sheet metal screw. It's a bigger nut, as you can, or screw, as you can see. So it really has a good bite on this bar, as well as the 16 gauge box metal behind. Now, it doesn't go through here. It doesn't ground to this channel, but we want it to. And even though this whole box is bolted by metal to metal, all the way to this channel and the rest of the solar rack, I just want to have some extra insurance and make sure that I have all the good grounding that I need. So I got a 1 foot long piece of 6 gauge copper wire. They call it bare wire, but this is size 6. It's perfect for ground. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook it. I've drilled a little hole right here, as you can see. I'm going to stick it in here. Then I'm going to run it through here, up through this ground, as soon as I can loosen that. And then attach it to this bus. And then I'm also going to attach it to that channel iron there, to make sure that we've got good grounding. I'm not sure I need it. I'm just doing it as an extra precaution, just in case, so that I can make sure I got good grounding. So, okay, so there's some debate in the electrical world over whether zinc plated metal provides as good a ground as, say, aluminum or bare. And there are people who say, nope, it does not provide as good a grounding. You need to score the zinc or something like that in order for it to, you know, for that metal to accept electrical flow. Other studies have come out and said, nope, zinc is just as good as aluminum. There's no problem using it as ground material. However, I got this. This is what's called a C-channel, or a channel grounding lug. Channel type grounding lug, I think they call it. And that's how it goes on. There's a part here with some, you know, some little ridges on there that are supposed to bite into the metal and disturb that zinc and get, you know, good ground. And then this side accepts the ground wire. Because it's outdoor, I need to use a little of this antioxidant joint compound. You just, a little dab will do. You just stick it on there on both connections here on this, and then you bolt it and torque it onto there. This is known, this is made by a company called Greaves, and the number on it is GB C as in cat 2A SST. It's got stainless steel bolts, and the piece itself is aluminum, but we'll go ahead, let's get this hooked up. Okay, so there we are. I torqued that thing pretty good. That's a 3/8 bolt. I just stuck it on there as hard as I could. I got to come back and figure out what the torque spec is on it, but it looks like about a 3/8 bolt. So whatever you think the torque spec should be on a 3/8 bolt that's made of stainless steel. Now, this box is grounded to the solar rack, the solar array. Now, the panels themselves, this is a grounding system, so the panels themselves will already be grounded through the rack, you know, to the soil. And that's good whether you pour concrete for footings on it, or whether you drive them directly into the ground. Either way, they're considered grounded. But now we'll have all of this going over to the house grounded, the whole system all the way over to the new house. All right, so there we go. That's all I can do for now. Well, actually, I can hook up the exterior, you know, the weatherproof cover for that. So I'll do that. And I also need to install a chase nipple in here to keep from, you know, scarring wiring. So I'll get one of those out of them. But yeah, so we've got our ground. We've got the ground hooked up for our surge protectors. We've got the wiring started at least for these disconnect switches. We've got our weatherhead caps and conduit in for the PV wire that comes from the panels. We've got the conduit installed, and obviously the box installed onto the conduit. It turns out I'm not going to need, you know, any kind of stabilizing thing over there, because it looks like just about, you know, less than 18 inches worth of conduit is sticking up out of the ground. So I'm not worried about ground movement, because as you saw, that sweep is buried quite deeply into the ground below the frost line. So I'm not too worried about that. The box is secured nicely. It's a 16 gauge box. It's not going anywhere. I don't think any of this is going anywhere. And although I'm not having this inspected, this should pass inspection. There are a couple little things I have to do, you know, to make it pretty, but this should pass an electrical or solar installers and solar inspectors inspection. Now, please, disclaimer as usual, I'm not an electrician, never have been. The only electrical work I've ever done is on my own stuff, except I helped a friend a time or two with some, like, you know, sticking in a circuit and outlet. Yeah, so please, you know, verify all of this with the National Electrical Code, or an electrician, or an solar installer, or an electrical inspector. I'm going to vacuum the bottom of this thing out now that I'm done working in here for the time being, clean this up, And the next thing, I mean, that'll be it for this video. But the next thing to do coming up in a future video will be Wormski's coming out to help here pretty soon. And we're going to install the panels on this array. And then we're also going to go ahead and run our wire through the conduit from the house to here, and at least have this end of the house solar stuff done. I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you have any questions or comments, please include them. Please subscribe if you have not. You know, it doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us a lot, get the publicity. And so we sure appreciate your hanging with us and watching, and we will see you on the next one.